And we're live on YouTube now as well as recording.
Okay, so I will call our meeting to order. Welcome colleagues, council colleagues, staff, members of the public, and delegations. I know we have a number this evening. Before we begin, I just want to make a plea, I think, on behalf of all of my council colleagues, and I know all those who care about our local economy, that it has been a really, really tough time for many of our local businesses. And I think it's important that all of the residents here in North Grenville really think about how to support local, of course, safely adhering to those public health guidelines. Many businesses are now offering curbside delivery, shipping options. My local markets is an excellent way to support not just businesses in our local community, but certainly those in surrounding areas. And I'm sure that anyone watching is extremely aware of the impact of the second disruption on our local business community, on which we rely so heavily. So really, please do your part. I know council colleagues feel as passionately about this as I do. And we are working actively with the BIA, the Chamber, other business networks, both local papers, to really drive the message home that there's no better way, especially in the current environment, to protect, I think, our local economy than shopping local. And there are lots of, again, very safe ways to do that. So I don't know, council, if anyone has anything to add, but I think it is an important message to deliver this evening. The light at the end of this tunnel is that COVID numbers have been dropping and remain extremely low and stable in our area. And of course, all schools for the 4 school boards reopen this week. That's a promising sign, but I know it offers no relief at this juncture to the local businesses, particularly those whose storefronts are closed and are really struggling to once again pivot to other options, which are often very, very labor intensive. So just a quick, I think, plea and reminder to everyone to please do your best to support our local businesses. Colleagues, anything you wish to add before we move on? Okay. So with that in mind, we'll move directly to the approval of the agenda. And of course, that is that the revised agenda, rather, for the January 26, 2020 council meeting be approved as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder? I see Councillor O'Sullivan and Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Any comments on the agendas this evening? Seeing none, I will call the question. If you could all just raise your hands, that would be great. Thank you. All in favor? We have an agenda. Secondly, looking for disclosures of interest in regards to any item on the agenda this evening. Any disclosures? Seeing none, I'll move on. Thank you. And now we'll move to presentations and delegations. And of course, it's our pleasure to welcome from WSP Canada. I believe we have Kimberly Hutton and Carly McCachran. Is someone from the staff side introing this presentation, or are we going straight to WP Consulting?
I am, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
It's Karen.
Director Dunlop, hi. All right, over to you. Thank you.
So the municipality has been working since 2015 to identify and create design standards for the unique community of Burt's Rapids. As part of this project in 2020, the municipality issued an RFP for the development of a conceptual design for Burt's Rapids to assist in maintaining its heritage character while improving the capital infrastructure. The conceptual design will focus on right-of-way modifications, including stormwater management, multimodal transportation, and connectivity, parking, illumination, landscaping, and streetscaping, while maintaining the historic character of the community. The intent of the presentation at the agency stakeholder meeting and the presentation with council this evening is intended to introduce the design portion of the municipality's project for infrastructure improvements and to present a summary of the background information provided to WSP, including the records of previous consultation activities. While we appreciate that the presentation does not necessarily reflect the details of the entire history of the community input, it is only intended as a high-level summary of key issues. This meeting is an opportunity to formally launch the conceptual design project plan with council as the ultimate approval authority. This is an opportunity for council members to share with WSP what they have heard from residents and their constituents on related matters before proceeding with the design work. So tonight we have the team from WSP presenting, led by Kimberly Hunton. That's my intro.
Thank you very much, Director Dunlop, and over to the consultants. Thank you.
Hi. Says I'm on mute, but my other one says I'm not muted. Can you hear me, Heather? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you very much, Mayor and councillors, for having us here for the working session as part of the Burt's Rapids Conceptual Design Plan. As Karen mentioned, we're here to introduce the project for the design portion of the Burt's Rapids Conceptual Design Plan and the design guidelines. And we want to solicit input from you as council on the key considerations and some of the priorities that we want to be making sure are getting incorporated throughout the project and in the actual design moving forward. There have been, as Karen mentioned, there's been years worth of efforts by the community association and municipality in planning and in public works to develop the vision for the hamlet of Burt's Rapids, including policies in the council adopted secondary plan within the OP. What we're doing now is looking at that community vision to identify how it can be technically implemented. That's going to be a balance of the desires and the vision with the contemporary design standards that we have today for things like accessibility or operational requirements. Those are just some of the examples. So Heather, we'll move on to the next slide, please. So today we're here to introduce the overall project, and as Karen mentioned, provide the information that's been consolidated from a year's worth of efforts. We've grouped them into themes of issues and considerations. The issues and the considerations that we are bringing forward right now, it's a summary of what the background information is that we've collected, but it also includes issues raised by residents, the community association, and agency stakeholders. At the end, there's going to be an opportunity for some discussion for where we can then hear from council on what they've heard from constituents in the community for the key pieces moving forward. Okay, next slide. So right now we are at the project initiation stage, the first part, to collect the key considerations and all of those pieces of information as part of the themes that we want to bring into the overall design. There's a variety of different sources that we start with the background documentation and the history side of it, and then we build from there. So some of it is all based on historical sides, but we also want to make sure that we're taking into account any changes that may have occurred since the last documentation and history has been taken. New residents may have moved in, new priorities or new areas or something that new has come up, such as one of the examples might be the beach issues that came up over the summer with everybody trying to escape their houses for a little bit of time and I have small children, so getting kids out of the house is a necessity. So there was a notice that as part of the project initiation, we had a notice that was hand delivered to the community last week to notify them of the project, inform them of what the upcoming points of contact will be, and to provide contact information so that they can send in their input. We started hearing back from some of those residents near the end of last week. The presentation here doesn't incorporate those comments yet because it was submitted prior to when we started seeing some of those emails start arriving, but they'll be incorporated into the overall themes and public gathering of information that's going to be informing the design piece. The next, we also started to hear from the agencies. We had our first agency meeting last week. That was an opportunity to have the agency representation as well as the municipal representatives and community association in the same virtual room to initiate some transparent dialogue that everyone could understand different perspectives and priorities. Some of the agencies were Parks Canada, Heritage. We had representatives from the City of Ottawa, the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority. And so just to get everybody in the room that might have any kind of considerations or issues or technical requirements within the design, get everybody all in the same room so that all sides can be heard at the same time and get those different perspectives. We're here now is it's not the last part because there's other opportunities for people to send in emails, but the last formal meeting as part of the initial initiation phase is bringing that information that we've heard so far to you and hearing what you have on the pieces that you have as key priorities. From this information, we're going to take that, develop the draft conceptual design plans. They will be brought forward in March to a second agency meeting, as well as a public open house or survey or some sort of virtual, depending on the situation that we're in at that time. And then the objective of that information would be to gather input on the proposed conceptual design plan. That conceptual design plan, bringing it forward to the public, we say here like it's 75%, and that the reason for that is it's options that will be brought forward, some of the ways that we can integrate those visions and those objectives pieces that have been brought forward through all of the consultation to date, and then what some of those pieces might look like that people can comment on them as to which ones these are the options that could work technically, but now we want to hear back from those options, those technical options of what would the community like to see in that piece of it. And then the last part, moving into May, would be the presentation to Municipal Council of the final plan and the guideline report. Next slide, please, Heather. So a lot of this sort of stemmed from a project that was put out to improve some infrastructure on Center Street and East Street from an operational point of view. There was some deteriorating sidewalks, some drainage issues. There was some raised asphalt encroachments on the right-of-way. And some of those capital improvements are up for renewal. The capital infrastructure is up for renewal. The previous design plans were not carried forward. There was some concerns raised by residents about maintaining the community character and having too much asphalt and gravel space, as well as some additional remaining drainage that could result from the asphalt and the width of the roadways. This has led to a significant amount of consultation by the community association as well as the municipality. And overall, what it means is that we are here today it's gotten us here to this point to then now try and take all of that information and those visions to come up with something that can both meet the requirements from an operational side, but as well as from the community side. Our communities grow and develop in different ways. Obviously, what we saw happening 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 1 year ago, there's been a lot of changes with how those things take place. And so we want to make sure that we're, the municipality has been growing and seeing all of those changes. And we want to make sure that all of that knowledge and base that's been collected over the years gets incorporated and seen in the overall plan. Next slide, please, Heather. So overall, where we are here, this leads us to what our project is, and it's to develop the conceptual design plan, the technical side of it, and community design guidelines to address what those comments and input is that has been received over the last 5 to 6 years, and take that and meet it with the latest technical guidelines. The objectives of the overall project is to compile and collect the topographical survey data. This will be what informs how we actually can carry out the design. Look at a transportation assessment, how people and different modes are moving around the community, review existing stormwater infrastructure and drainage concerns that have been raised, as well as some of the street lighting issues that have been raised. And then taking that information, we develop the community design guidelines and ultimately what the cross-section or what the roads will could potentially look like as they start being improved through an implementation program. So I think next slide, please, Heather. So some of the key themes that are going to be considered are the roadway cross-section. So this is what the road would look like, the width, what kind of pedestrian facilities might be on the roadway, how would drainage be addressed, how do cyclists or people with mobility needs, how are they moving around within the cross-section, traffic volumes and speeds, active transportation and connectivity to other active transportation facilities, such as the sidewalks, pedestrian facilities, and also the cycling components or the tip-to-tip trail. Stormwater management, landscaping and streetscaping, such as the trees, or if there was planter boxes, benches, that component. Emergency services, how they access and move around the community. This kind of also winter maintenance, where snow is getting cleared, how it's getting cleared. Parking, the street lighting for some consistency, and then also we have the UNESCO World Heritage Site requirements with the Rideau system being right there and surrounding the community. Next slide, please, Heather. So I'm not going to read the overall community vision. Everybody can read all, there's a lot of words there, but this is the vision for Burt's Rapids out of the North Grenville official plan. And essentially it is that Burt's Rapids should remain a small multi-generational hamlet that provides a safe and quiet way of life, and that its heritage resources are used to define the actual, the hamlet and the community. The information below is taken from the success criteria of the Hamlet Design Plan. It's paraphrased and shortened here for purposes of the presentation, but basically within that success criteria, there were what was seen as being a success would be quiet streets and narrow laneways, keeping up the small village ambiance, increasing the green spaces and trees within the village, having street lighting and benches that aren't distracting from the historic character, having it be a safe place to walk for all ages and be able to move around the community for all ages. There's also areas to improve or reduce rather the speed through the community on Grenville Street and Birch Avenue, and then all while sustaining the village, which includes improvements to the infrastructure to reverse the raised profiles and the ground levels that have been raised through the years of resurfacing. And then that feeds into the drainage component. Where the success criteria fit into this overall project is through the assessment and evaluation of the design alternatives. So if these are seen as some of the success pieces for the overall vision, we want to, we can carry those in through the assessment and evaluation to see how our design alternatives are addressing those sides of it. Heather, next slide, please. So the following slides that we're going to run through are basically the consolidation of our review of work that's been carried out to date. The starting point is with looking at historical documentation and the history and meetings that have taken place and any of that consultation component. And then bringing into that the agency meeting that I mentioned previously, new residents that are in the area and any comments that they might have, the council now, and anything new that might have come up with the community association. The history with the project and the area is that there was a rehabilitation design completed by the municipality back in 2015 for Center and East Streets. It outlined the need for the rehabilitation and cross-section alternatives, but there was a number of comments and concerns raised by the residents that it didn't fit within the community. The community association then brought forward a presentation to council for traffic calming and identifying the speed and heavy vehicle and some sightline issues that we're seeing within the community on their side. And it summarized some of the discussion that really revolved around traffic calming and the visioning exercise that was done of what kind of traffic calming measures could be implemented within the community, some planter boxes or curb extensions, bulb outs, that type of thing. There was also a roundtable on traffic flow and the streetscape for Grenville Street. This was also related to the speed limit reductions, potentially some speed humps or curb bulb outs, and looking at some signage measures as well. And the Burt's Rapid Community Association put together with input from the community, the Hamlet design plan that was brought forward, and this outlined, this is where the success criteria that was previously mentioned came from. And then we also have a number of emails and meetings that have taken place and been collected over the years, as well as the agency meeting that we just had last week, and then the input that's coming in from independent residents that might not form part of the community association or other agencies that are starting to come in as a result of the flyer that was distributed. So the comments that we have received are organized into 10 different themes that we're going to run through. And as I mentioned, these are ones that we've seen as of last Wednesday. Anything that's been received since then, we haven't had a chance to integrate into this presentation. Where it's blue, you'll see there's a highlight of the blue. Those are comments that came out of the agency stakeholder meeting that we had last week. Next slide, please, Heather. So roadway cross sections. This was, so again, these are the priorities and the vision that have been seen, and areas where we have received input onto what kind of consideration should be done for the design. So on Grenville Street, the comments have been to maintain 2 travel lanes with parking lanes and sidewalks on both sides of the street, to have native trees where we can implement some native trees between the parking lane and the sidewalk. And this would also include curb bulb outs. If traffic calming were to be put in place, they would be between the parking lane and the sidewalk, or the roadside and the sidewalk as well, so they would fit into the same sort of criteria. Parking spaces should be delineated with a different type of surface, so this could be something like paving stones, or a different kind of something that shows that it's different, not a driving lane. All side streets should have a consistent cross section. So the previous design, and this goes back from the 2015, and a lot's been done since then, but that previous design was 6 meters, and so that was seen as being too wide. The vision had been brought forward for a preference of 4 to 5 meters. That would needs to be taken a look at from a technical side, just on the feasibility for the clearance and what is required for the fire services, and how their outriggers get placed with loads and load distribution, and that side of how much space they require for that. But also we need to take a look and make sure that there's adequate snow storage area, and that we're not narrowing the road further in the wintertime. Grass shoulders were preferred for pedestrian and parking space to provide the natural drainage and filtration, and that's on the side streets. Next slide, please, Heather. So the Community Association had requested that traffic calming measures, and there was the presentation that was brought forward about traffic calming for Grenville Street to reduce speeds. The considerations there was about pedestrian safety, noise, and sightlines, as well as overall the safety issue that was identified was the transition that we're coming from the single lane swing bridge at 10 kilometers an hour of the speed limit to 2 lanes with 2 parking lanes at 50 kilometers, and then we go back to the 2-lane Burt's Avenue Bridge crossing, which is again posted at 50 kilometers an hour. And the idea was that any traffic calming measures that were implemented should aim to minimize any loss of existing on-street parking spaces on Grenville Street, and that anything that was implemented measures that double as traffic calming would also be seen as a benefit. So this is where we would have examples such as textured crosswalks or textured areas and parking for parking areas, paver stones for parking areas that are doing things to improve the streetscape. At the same time, it calms traffic and shows them that people are living here and not just to sort of run through the community. Next slide, please, Heather. This just continues. We had a little bit too much to fit on one slide. But again, some of the preferred traffic calming measures were curb bulb outs or bump outs, speed humps for reducing the speed on Grenville Street, and that what was discussed at the agency stakeholder meeting last week was to ensure that if we were including some bump outs, that they have some secondary benefits, such as an area to place vegetarian, a way to deal with some of the drainage, or it's also somewhere where, some of the streetscaping part of it could be implemented. As well, there was some complementary measures that were seen as beneficial, designating the street as a community safety zone or having some special signage along the route itself. Heather, next slide, please. The next theme was active transportation. And again, these were pieces that were brought in to do that. Concrete sidewalks on Grenville Street and Center Street only. Other side streets would have grass where there could then be proper drainage and filtration. There should be one of the pieces that were brought forward is about having a a pedestrian crossing on Grenville Street itself, and the Community Association had suggested 3 different locations, one at Center Street, one at the mailboxes in the community hall, and one at the tip-to-tip trail by the library. The tip-to-tip trail, having a formalized connection between Grenville Street and Center Street, for the tip-to-tip trail to be a little more formalized was another piece that came out of the consultation previously. And then within the Ottawa official plan and North Burt's Avenue is a rural cycling route in the City of Ottawa's ongoing official plan update. And then as part of North Grenville's official plan, it indicates that cycling connections to adjacent communities should be considered. So this is something as we move forward within the design for consideration. And then as part of the agency consultation last week, agency stakeholder meeting last week, the library was one of the representatives, and there was a comment that the library becomes a tourist attraction as the former Lockmaster's house during the summer and does attract a number of pedestrians. So that consideration, kind of leads back into with formalizing the tip-to-tip trail, but also the crossings itself. Next slide, please. Stormwater management is something that has come up and was seen actually through our walkthrough of the community. But the pieces of information that has been provided is that inadequate drainage has been identified and has been a significant issue. There's been some ground level creep. The roads have been increasing in height through the resurfacing, and so improvements there could help with the overall drainage. the community vision for increased green space. So things like bioswales might be options that we want to consider and utilize. There's the picture below just gives you an idea of what a bioswale might look like. It's an area where there's filtration of the water before it either goes into the river or the final source that helps clean out some of that water, but also can look quite nice with what grows in it at times. Infrastructure upgrades should minimize what the unfiltered water draining into the Rideau River would be, and then that gutters would only be implemented where and when absolutely necessary or required. Next slide, please. Winter and road maintenance. This is again kind of that same idea of the asphalt creep, so it kind of fits in with the drainage as well, where we're having parts and sections of the roadway that are getting a little bit higher. We're losing the crossfall that's helping the drainage, and it's not necessarily running where we want it to. Snow clearing operations should deposit the snow in open grassy spaces is one of the pieces that was brought up by the community association, away from the homes and the fences. This was added to during the agency stakeholder meeting last week by the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, that where that is, that's good, but we just want to also make sure that it's not near the river or where it would narrow road widths, was brought up from that perspective. Consideration be given to snow clearing operations when recommending physical traffic calming measures. And this again is something that came out of that historical communication from the community itself. Emergency services, reviewing key consideration to be brought forward within the vision was about reviewing possibility of leaving East Street less than 6 meters. There's a fire route at the north end of East Street with the dry hydrant, so we need to just make sure that from a technical side of things, that the fire truck movements can be accommodated within whatever road space that we have and the radius at the corners. And that also would then not just include the emergency services, but also the municipal vehicles such as the snow plows, waste collection, sewage pumping, and school buses. We were told at the agency stakeholder meeting that the school buses are only small school buses that are on the island because of restrictions at the swing bridge. The other one that was brought up last week at the agency meeting was about ensuring on-street parking doesn't obstruct the vehicle path. And this is where, if we are narrowing any kind of asphalt widths, we want to ensure that if it is on an emergency route or for snow clearing, that considerations are made for that. Next slide, please. So the recommendation as part of the vision that was brought forward for consideration here in our design is that a lighting evaluation on the side streets be carried out, with the idea that we want to minimize, the community is looking to minimize the light pollution without compromising safety, and that the current hydro pole mounted light fixtures, the overall vision was seen that they would be replaced with efficient downcast fixtures on light poles that might be more suiting to the characteristics of the community. The beach that's on Henry Street was brought up as a consideration in our agency stakeholder meeting last week. And this is as a result, I think, of more people visiting than what has been seen in the past. And the community experienced issues with a high number of vehicles parking where parking wasn't necessarily available, blocking access points, and just the overall as well access to the beach for people with maybe mobility impairments or small children and that side of things, if a single parent was trying to get to the space. So these were issues that have been raised as new considerations since some of the initial input was provided. Next slide, please. Parks Canada had discussed the swing bridge and had raised the concern that there's the potential for some damage from southbound vehicles with trailers, just with the approach angle to the bridge itself. As well, residents had raised at the stakeholder agency meeting last week, the community association noted that there's the, you can see in that picture there, it's noted that there's the 5-ton weight restriction, but observations have been made by the residents that there are some non-compliance with that. And then the tip-to-tip trail, again, as it's blue, it was brought up in the agency stakeholder meeting to encourage parking by trail users to be on Grenville Street. And this could be enhanced through that a formalized crossing if one was to be implemented on Grenville Street. Next slide, please. So as part of the initial data collection part, not just the review of the historical information, we also went out and did a community walkthrough with municipal staff. This was to really gain an understanding of the existing conditions, see what some of the issues were that we were reading about, some of these considerations and key points that were being raised. And then that provides the context for our technical design review and gives us, the better picture of what's actually out on the ground. Some of the observations that we noted were very similar and a lot of things that had been brought up by the community in the past. The sidewalk on the north side of Center Street overlays a previous concrete sidewalk. So you could see what those raised elevations were that were being discussed. There's some out of way. One of the pieces of information that was raised with the municipality is that there's some out of way travel for the winter maintenance on this, where they're maintaining some of the roads as they're not permitted on the swing bridge. They have to go around onto the Ottawa side, although there's a number of different, as was discovered during the agency stakeholder meeting, there's a number of different groups and agencies that are providing snow clearage to Burt's Rapids. The catch basins and culverts were partially blocked by debris and growth when we were out there. There was some of the inconsistent crossfalls that we're talking about, that slope from the center line of the roadway on paved streets that help guide the rainwater and snow runoff, and then potentially some underside storm drain inlets, which leads to the drainage issues that was raised by the residents. So these were things that confirmed, obviously, and painted some of the better picture for us than just reading some of those comments on paper. Next slide, please. And then just continuing with some of the observations was, again, it's the raised profile on Center Street that contributes to some of the drainage side of things. We saw some paved over boulevard and separation between the pedestrian space and the road space, which was impeding on the potential for some of the green space areas that we had been reading about. Asphalt and overall was in poor condition with extensive cracking. Again, this is because things have been paused a little bit while we, the municipality and community, have been trying to work through what the best vision side is for everybody. And then there's some inconsistent lighting at the intersections, which was again raised by the residents as a consideration. We were seeing some of those hydro light poles with light standards on them, but also inconsistently throughout the community, depending on which intersection you were at. Next slide, please. So now we're here obviously to collect some information and input from council. We want to hear from you. The next step then would be to refine the vision and objectives related to the conceptual design plan. So this is if any new key issues are raised. For example, the beach was something that's new. Some of the pieces about the swing bridge that the agency raised, some of those sides. So it's not the overall vision for Burt's Rapids itself, it's really about the objectives and the vision within the conceptual design plan. and then to develop the plan itself that we can bring forward. And that's the fun part, so that everybody can start seeing some of all of this hard work and what it will potentially look like, which needs to get done before it can actually be implemented. So that's the end of my formal presentation. Really, we're just looking to hear from council if there's any key design considerations or objectives that you'd like to raise, that we have in front of mind as we're moving forward with the development of the design portion for the project. Thank you.
Heather, do you want to make a statement, or should I?
I believe that you should.
Okay. Her worship had to step away because of family emergency. One of her children is ill. Nothing fatal, just ill. So she's taking care of that matter. So I will take over as chair tonight, and we will go forward from here. So right now, it looks like we're opening up to some suggestions, questions maybe to Kim. Kim, thank you for all the work you've done. And thank you to the Bert's Rabbits Community Association. You guys have done a lot of work, and you've been very patient for several years. And to Karen for a lot of work, of course, that she's done on the ground with her staff. It's been a little bit of a run, but all good to make this project come out to satisfy all the parties. Council, of course, has also been involved for many sessions over the last few years as well, putting our comments in as well. So anyway, so I'll leave it to my council colleagues if they have any questions. The other thought might be if after the presentation that the Bert's Rabbits Community Association puts on, you may have more questions or maybe want to leave them till then. It's up to you guys. Let me know. Councillor Barkley, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll dive in, and certainly a lot of questions have been raised over the last 2 years. I think the first meeting I attended was back in February of 2019. So it's been 2 years watching this process evolve. And I'd like to thank Kimberly and her team at WSP. I think they've been very responsive and sensitive to the community design as it's evolved over time. And just a little background for the public is that when I first heard about the challenges at Bert's Rapids, it was really from a public works perspective. And then as I heard more from the community, it became a planning issue. And my hat's off to the community. It's very comprehensive. I know it's years, 5-7 years of work in pulling this together. And I understand the anxiety. Well, it's excitement as well. I mean, we're at a turning point here where we're finally going to be moving towards implementing some of these design elements. But I understand the anxiety of the community in terms of handing over their what is an aspirational document, but it's very detailed. They've certainly left no stone unturned, to excuse the metaphor, to reach a very detailed, comprehensive hamlet design plan. So I understand their anxiety. It's sort of like, in my mind, an architect who's worked for years on his drawings, handing it over to a general contractor, and we all know what happens when a general contractor gets this baby of a architectural plan. But I think the process that we're involved in right now, which is, I think, unique and very encouraging for the municipality, something I'd like to see replicated in the other hamlets if we can. Now we're in the final stages of turning this into reality, and it's going to be many years to go through all the design recommendations. It's going to be determined by budget and just facts on the ground. You'll put a shovel into the ground and you'll hit a rock, and then that's when things start to change. So I just wanted to reflect back that I have heard from the community. I understand their anxiety in going forward, but it's we have to cross this point and start turning it into reality. So I don't really have any questions. It's very detailed, and I think the evaluation and recommendations from WSP are valid and should guide us going into the future. So I have no questions at this point in time. Just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Councillor Strachan and then Councillor O'Sullivan next.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to agree with what Councillor Barclay has said about the comprehensive nature of this plan. I think it covers a lot of points. I think the hamlets, I think our entire area is running into the same issues where there's growth and there's changes and there's things that change that come with time that the hamlets weren't originally designed to accept. So the kind of space that you need for a very large, emergency vehicle and the like, the swing bridge being one of those examples for snow clearing. And then you mentioned the area of the hamlet that may be of concern for an emergency vehicle and so on. So I think that, safety does need to be, it is paramount, but doing so in a thoughtful way by, making sure that where things don't need to be changed or they don't need to be changed as much and still remain safe, I think is important. And I think you touched on all of those. There's certainly a lot of information here. I think that the last better part of a year with COVID has shown us what can change and the volume of people at the beach and so on. Guilty. I was there with my kids at some point over the summer, probably more than once. And so I did see that there were a lot more people there than what I had seen previously. I know that not just the public works side of things with regards to the state of some of the streets and roads and different changes that have happened that may have to be, that will need to be addressed regarding the street cover as well as drainage. But I think a couple of years ago when I was campaigning and talking to people, they'd talk about the traffic and the speed on the main street and the safety concern about safety for families with children and so on. So, I think that some of the proposals that are in here about how to make it safer and how to make sure that, you can do more than one thing, that multifaceted approach to the bump outs and so on. I think that that's a really great way of approaching things. The idea of this looking at Burt's Rapids, I think we should be looking at how the priorities are set for this hamlet and then, look at not the details, but just the overall list of things that need to be considered for our historical hamlets and say, this should be taken into consideration when we look at other areas as well, so that we find the right balance between that cultural historical heritage piece and the safety, public works growth piece that need to be addressed. So sorry, like John, I don't have any questions. I think it was very well done. There's a lot of information here. The community piece there, I think, is key, and making sure that there's that follow-up and that continued dialogue with them. And I know that there's a few people here on the line that are from the BRCA, and that I think will have some comments as well. But that's as far as I need to go with mine. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. And so the mayor wanted to let you know that it's not COVID. So I want to cover that. Anyways, so Councillor O'Sullivan, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to WSP and to Karen and Kyle and everyone from Public Works who's been involved in this. Just to clarify for the public, because I wasn't sure either what a dry hydrant was. And apparently it is a hydrant that's connected to the water source, but it's only activated like the river, but it's only activated when it's connected to a pump on a fire truck. So I just learned that this evening. Thank you. I think it's a great plan. I think it brings in the necessary improvements for safety, etc., while keeping the beautiful small hamlet character, which is very important, I believe, to the residents of Burt's Rapids, because it is such a beautiful little place. And I was very happy to see that there was active transportation consideration given. I just wondered if there were bike racks involved or included in any of that planning, like perhaps at the beach or where the mailboxes are located, etc. And the other question was accessibility. are there accessibility features in the roads or sidewalks, etc., that will help with people who may be using scooters or wheelchairs, etc. So those were my only questions, and I think it was a really nice, comprehensive plan, and those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Kim, would you like to answer those questions?
Sure, thanks. So just to be clear, so all the information that we're presenting today, tonight is information that's been brought forward as considerations of what to go into the design from the community and from everybody. And so it's not actually everything that might get put into the overall plan. And the pieces of information that we're looking for, so your questions are fantastic questions, because they are exactly what I want to hear, and what we want to hear is what those some of the considerations that we might not have highlighted within the summary, and ones that we want to make sure are moving forward into the design. So bike parking is something that hasn't come up in the other information that we've been gathering and through our agency stakeholder meeting and that side of things. And so I've made a note, and I'm sure Carly has also made a note, that to make sure that we're looking at that and where the most appropriate places would be for bike parking as we are looking at the overall plan within the community as well. And accessibility, yes, those are where the desire meets technical often ends up being related to accessibility and ensuring that people of all ages and all abilities can move around the community. And it's not, it's the mobility impairment side of things, but also, people with strollers and other modes as well. So those will definitely be taken into consideration through the technical review of what the overall considerations are. Thank you for the opportunity to answer.
Okay, council colleagues, I think we're going to move on soon. I have one quick question for Kim, though, and it's, I didn't see a lot of talk about it. So Kim, I don't know how much of the historical aspect of Burt's Rapids came into your study or the work that you guys were doing, or how it may have affected what you were doing.
So obviously the historic nature of Burt's Rapids is something that we want to be forefront in our minds as we're moving forward with developing the conceptual design plan. It has been brought up on a couple of comments we've received since the agency meeting as well, that I think really it's part of the overall vision and the write in your official plan about keeping the historic nature of and having everything that is within the design reflect the historic nature of the community. And so as we're moving forward into the design options review, we'll be taking into consideration that side of it. So things like the street lighting or the green space and bioswale type of idea to maintain the feel of the community. I hope that answers. Thank you.
No, thank you, Kim. I'm glad you're speaking of it, and you will be continuing to keep it on the radar as we go forward. I don't know if my council colleagues have any more questions. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next section. So the Burt's Rapids Community Association. Okay, Councillor Barclay, I'll let you chime in then for a minute.
Sorry, just one final question. The opportunity for further community consultation will happen at the next stage. Is that correct? At the 75% design stage?
That's my understanding, right? Correct, Kim?
Yes, that's right. So the next point of consultation, where we'll be coming with the public open house and we'll be having the second agency stakeholder meeting, will be with the 75% design plan, which will show the options that we have assessed or evaluated and get feedback on those as to what would be then the public's and the agency side of what they would prefer to have as the actual design piece going into the guideline.
Thank you, Kim. It might be challenging for some of my council colleagues to come up with a lot of questions right now, because we've been questioning are asking lots of questions for the last 2 years. So it's not like this is fresh and new to us. So we've been moving along. But anyways, hopefully we'll have some more as we move along. So for the Burt's Rabbits Community Association, I'm not sure who's speaking tonight, but I will let you take it away.
My apologies, actually, there's a
sorry.
resolution, sorry, Deputy
Okay.
Mayor. There's a resolution associated with the receipt of the WSP report, which reads, Council received the staff report, PW-002-2021, Burt's Rapids Conceptual Design Council Working Session for information purposes, along with the Burt's Rapids Conceptual Design Plan presentation.
Okay, I'll need a mover for that and a seconder.
Yes, please.
Councillor Strachan and O'Sullivan. All in favor?
Thank you.
I have a question regarding this motion. Does it not refer to the presentation we're about to receive from the Burt's Rapids Community Association?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, there is actually a separate resolution for the
sorry,
presentation that's coming up.
I misunderstood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I can move ahead, Heather. She's going to keep me in line. I don't do this very often.
Yes, you can
Okay,
move on.
so I'll have the Burt's Rapids people either introduce themselves or who's going to be speaking. Go ahead.
Yes, certainly. Heather, would you mind bringing up the deck?
Yes, we'll do that
So-
for you.
Okay, no worries. So good evening, and thank you for giving us a chance to participate here tonight. My name is Inge Van Gemeren, for those who don't know, and I've lived in Burt's Rapids for about 25 years, and I've been chair of the Burt's Rapids Community Association for almost as long. The association is here tonight primarily just to add some additional context to the previous presentation by WSP. I am not the only speaker. We're going to have two members, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. First of all, though, I would like to say thank you so much to Kimberly and her crew at WSP. We had a chance to meet with them for the first time just yesterday, and I'm really, really thrilled and very pleased that the narration that accompanied today's deck reflects a lot of what we had discussed. So you may have, I know she didn't have time to make more changes to the deck because of timing, but there were a lot of concerns and questions that we brought up about the holisticness of the plan. And of course, our success criteria are very important to us. So I'm very pleased that that was very well reflected in Kimberly's narrative tonight. So thank you very much, Kimberly, for that. So as WSP noted, I just want to kind of put that base theme here. The journey started for the community many years ago, focusing on traffic calming, right? But a proposal by Public Works in 2015 really triggered us to take a broader, more holistic view. And quite simply put, we really believe that judicious maintenance executed in small pieces driven by limited annual budgets, which is today's reality, is no substitute for what we can achieve ongoing and long-term with a more integrated long-term plan. So I know the WSP, very astutely took notice of a lot of the comments and concerns. They're very visible in our community today, and I'm very happy that they're being noted as we look at the long-term benefits. So yeah, you can go to the next one. So we're going to talk very briefly about three things. If you go to the next slide, please. So just very quickly, so we have a very capable, very competent board of trustees that represent a very broad cross-section of our community. We've got young, we've got old, working, retired, with kids, with grandkids, on island, off island, Ottawa side, North Grenville side, Main Street, side street. So it's a really nice representation. Sorry, can you go back one to the previous slide, please? Yes, right there, just on the topics. That's great, thank you. So tonight, I'm going to introduce two of those board members who are going to be presenting. Bart Billmer is going to talk a little bit, share about what meaningful consultation really means to us as a community. And then Cameron Rhodes is going to highlight some of the key elements within our heritage design plan, which may not have been readily apparent. So as I said, there has definitely been some change in language used with the WSP side. So we're feeling very good. I'm feeling very good about what I heard this evening. Now, thanks largely due to the onset of COVID, I don't believe the full council had seen the original heritage design plan as created by the community, but the full copy has been shared tonight. So I believe it's in your binders, and of course it's attached to this and available online. Okay, so after Bart and Cameron speak, I'll wrap up with a couple comments about moving forward from here. Thank you. So you can go to the next slide, and Bart.
Okay, thank you very much, Inga. And just a quick introduction of myself. I've lived in Burt's Rapids now for a few years. I've been on the board for some of that time, and I'm very happy to be representing the community this evening. Just a bit of background. I've lived in a historic hamlet before, although I have to say, unlike Burt's Rapids, where I lived before, wasn't described as a hamlet worthy of Shakespeare. And, that kind of description of our community, I think really resonates with the community. And I think a lot of us feel a very strong sense of stewardship and responsibility, and to make it an amazing place to live for now and into the future. I think before I get too much into the meaningful consultation, I think folks have laid out some of the background to what we're up to today and what got us to this point. Just to go into it in a bit more detail, the traffic calming study that was submitted a couple of years back kind of led to a proposition from the planning department, and those of us there were told, well, this is really nice. How would you like to take this, go to the community and consult further, and come back with some recommendations on hamlet design for the community? It was suggested we also go to Elgin, Ontario, see some work that was done there. And we said, well, of course, we'll do that. In doing so, we knew that to be successful, we were going to have to go back through history, look at some of the previous discussions that have been mentioned both by Kim and Inga. Look at our community vision, look at our safety concerns. Of course, we did a road trip to Elgin, and we knew we were going to have to design one heck of a process to be successful. Inga really well described our community. It's very diverse opinions. So we knew we were ourselves were going to need some real meaningful dialogue and consultation with the community in order to be successful. So on to meaningful consultation. As I mentioned, we certainly felt the need to have to do that with the community ourselves. We felt that pressure and responsibility, but we think it also is important, and it's also meaningful with North Grenville, whether it's with Public Works or the planning department or with other stakeholders. For us, meaningful consultation is really about engagement and really about quality. So the information, so just going into the points a little bit, quality information as a basis of what we're discussing, transparency, not just of the people involved, but the process as well. Time to reflect. A 24-hour turnaround can be difficult when it's not your day job. Also, multiple opportunities to ask questions and get answers and for time for understanding. These are all things that we feel are foundational, and certainly what we felt both with our dealings with the community, but in terms of also our expectations on this project, whether that be with Public Works or with WSP. We do feel, and Inga said, I think what she said reflects our view. We think there's been improvements in the presentation. But perhaps we're going to ask for a little bit more. In terms of the BRCA and the consultations we did with our community, we're describing it as unprecedented, exemplary. We think it was pretty darn substantive. We did build on progressively on the discussions from the past and the issues of the present and look towards the future. So we learned from the past discussions over the past number of years. We really focused on getting the widest possible cross-section of the community, and we employed many means to do so. We've got an email list of the community, close to 100 people. We went door to door, we dropped off flyers, we did surveys, held public meetings, informal dialogue, we published reports, we asked for feedback on those reports, we invited the community to our public meetings. So we really feel we went above and beyond. And I think while we may not have 100% alignment on specific items, I'm not sure that's ever possible. We do feel that we got significant buy-in from the community. And I'd like to show you a couple of slides, some of our interesting visuals. Can you go to the next slide? So we as part of our consultation, we did a bit. We asked people to rate the ideas, and I can't remember how many there were now, 15, 16 ideas perhaps. And we asked them to rate it on a sliding scale from, all from agree to disagree, 1 being agree, 5 being disagree. And we asked, if you disagree, to give us a detailed description of the concern. And so what you could see here is, all things considered, all the points, we had an average of 1.6 out of 5. Which is, we thought that was really positive. We had strong engagement in the community as well. And we segmented some of that data. So took a deeper dive, we weren't just satisfied with that 1.6. We saw 19 residents, and by residents we mean households, rated the package between 1 and 1.75, 6 between 2 and 2.75, and 2 between 3 and 3.75. So flip over to the next slide, please. So here is an issue by issue breakdown. And so across the top, you can see Grenville, streets, sidewalks, crosswalks, etc. And then the location of all the residents. So we created here, you've probably all seen these, we call them heat maps, to see where do we have the least alignment? I guess I'll put it that way. And you can see there red, orange, yellow. As part of our process, we as a group, we went through every single written comment, and we updated the proposal to reflect those comments. So these are pre the final version that you have. So we did everything we could to address every comment, and I feel we addressed every single one in some way. Not probably not perfect, probably not to everybody's satisfaction, but boy, did we try. And we spent some long sessions going through those as a group, and to respect the comments that people wrote, and for the efforts that the community made to input to us. So maybe just go back to the main slide again, please. One more, please. Thank you. So So just to conclude on consultation, hope I've been able to give you a sense of the work that we've done, the analysis, the steps that we've taken. We like to think that the consultation is not over. I think the community is expecting us and the BACOS, not just the Birds Rapids Community Association, but all of us to start addressing these proposals and to be using the Hamlet Design Plan as the starting point. I think I'll just conclude there and pass the floor over to Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you, Bart, and thank you to the council members tonight for having us and for welcoming our delegation. I'm going to be talking about a few of the highlights from the HDP and starting with our success criteria. Pakak, if you could please just take us forward a couple of slides. I think we're looking for slide 7 on here. Oh, I'm sorry, there it was, so slide 6. So this HDP success criteria that you can see listed here is actually an excerpt from the Hamlet Design Plan that we had provided previously, or the Heritage Design Plan. One thing that we couldn't agree on was actually naming the acronym properly. Our success criteria represented the vision statement in a measurable way without dictating specific solutions. Obviously, as part of this process, we recognize that we're not experts in streetscaping and recommending lengths and widths and verticals, so we definitely recognize that. One thing that we are looking for are quiet streets and narrow laneways to preserve our small village ambiance. Streetscapes that, as Bart quoted the Bard a little bit earlier, represent and reflect the hamlet's historic location and natural beauty, including increased green spaces and trees within the village itself. Visual and physical elements along Grenville Street and Birds Avenue will encourage slower vehicular traffic and safer intersections for our pedestrians and residents and visitors. Safe walkways exist throughout the village, and we want to provide access to community assets, including the beach and, of course, the tip-to-tip trail. Sustainability of the village in the long term, including our built-in heritage and the environment, are improved. Key factors include reversal of asphalt creep that we've seen from a number of public works projects over the years, and ground level creep, as well as improved drainage to minimize water runoff onto private property and into the Rideau system. Appropriate parking is to be made available for residents and their guests, and of course, visitors for the area. Community adornments such as lighting and benches aren't going to distract from the historic character, and lighting is energy efficient and minimizes our light pollution that we might see. So those are the criteria that we defined as a community association based off of the feedback that we received as part of our consultation with the community over the years. If you could just take us ahead, please, one slide. So again, here's an excerpt from our HDP, and it just gives a little bit more detail about what we received and feedback and some of the recommendations that we made as part of our vision document. So we see here a detail of curb extensions and bump outs. Now, this is an example of how the HDP really holistically addresses the interconnectedness of what we're looking to accomplish with some of these elements and some of the improvements that we can make. These bump outs will add traffic calming and safety, as well as adding greening to the community, will address issues like drainage, and of course, add to the village atmosphere. All of these details, of course, can be found in the HDP document, which is attached to this agenda. And of course, we can distribute at request if you get in touch with us through the community association. If you could please take us to the next slide. The Parks Canada Tip-to-Tip Trail was also one of the highlights of our HDP and was addressed, or excuse me, was brought forward by a number of community members and was really clear as one of the priorities that we would focus on as our recommendation coming back to council. Now, our recommendations for the Tip-to-Tip Trail do address one issue that we have within the community, which is parking off of Center Street. So Center Street is the road, if you're not familiar, that actually runs parallel to the Tip-to-Tip Trail as it goes through the village. And adding the additional detail for the Tip-to-Tip as we've outlined in the HDP will make a clear demarcation of the Tip-to-Tip Trail, and of course encourages dialogue with Parks Canada and engagement across those jurisdictional lines as we hope to cooperate with all the different municipalities and different stakeholders as part of this process. This was identified again as an important design feature for the HDP vision. And again, it was something that came up with the community members as being something very important. Now, we do encourage everyone to review the HDP document. Again, it is attached to the agenda items tonight. And if you would like a copy, you can contact us through the Community Association, either on our Facebook page or via email, which can be found just at our Community Hall post office box there. So thank you very much. And I would like to pass on to Inge again, and we'll talk about our path forward to success.
Sorry, I was looking for my unmute button. Okay, thank you so much, both of you, much appreciated. So now let's look forward as we go down. We are excited. This has been a long journey, and we're certainly very excited to be making some progress and to be able to see the end of the tunnel here. We want this to be a success. The entire community wants this to be a success. And the Birds Rapids Community Association in particular wants the March 75th review as defined by WSP to be a resounding success with our residents. Now, in our opinion, that success is going to be measured by the degree to which the design review advances the conversation thus far. So again, all the work that's gone into it to date and the imperfections that may still be there, we're really looking for expertise from the WSP group to be able to take it to the next level for us in a way that is going to be visual and reflects the community vision and, of course, satisfies stakeholders. Now, we're very confident that this can happen, right? We know that this is definitely on the radar. And we acknowledge that there certainly may be a few technical issues, but we also have a very intelligent community that I'm emphasizing no one to underestimate. We will accept certainly less than ideal if there's respectful, open dialogue and an explanation as to why or why not. As you can imagine, we're all much too old here to be accepting because as an answer for any given design element. So as Bart emphasized, meaningful consultation is the key to success. And so we are requesting, as part of this presentation, we are requesting a commitment from council to ensure that there is in fact ongoing two-way engagement before, during, and after the development of the 75% proposal in March. I think John Barclay's question was very appropriate. You asked about what is the next point of consultation, and the answer may not be as clear as it seemed. The entire process includes only one community consultation, only one, at the 75% design point, in which case it'll then be taken to the 100% and shared with council. So at this moment, there's only going to be one opportunity, formal opportunity, for the community to stand up and see what's going on and provide that feedback. And as we've shared with you, our definition of meaningful feedback, one won't be sufficient. People need the opportunity to see it, to look at it, to think about it, to go away and chat with their neighbors and be able to come back and ask questions. It really is an iterative process, and we've learned ourselves how fabulous the conversation gets the more times you stir it, right? The stew only gets better if you keep stirring it. So we're very concerned that a singular touch point and a virtual one community is efficient to really truly drive out the best possible.
Inge, I think you were breaking up just a little bit over the last 20 seconds or so. You might want to turn your video off and reiterate that a little bit, if you can hear me.
Now, we, the Birds Rapids Community Association, in internal hamlets. Now, we commit, the community association, so we're asking for a commitment from council to ensure this ongoing dialogue, and again, to revisit the question of how many times this proposal is going to be shared with the community. We also commit to full transparency and timely sharing of information with the broader community. Thus, we took the hand-delivered notes and made sure that they made it out to everybody and helped to kind of facilitate the interconnectivity, the attendance by giving folks coaching as to how to participate and how to get enrolled. We would like to be able to provide council with some monthly updates, if that makes sense, in a manner that's most convenient to you, to continue to share our views and regarding collaboration and consultation, all with the intent to drive through to the best possible successful outcome. At the end of this journey, council member and staff are going to turn their attention to new projects and new challenges, appropriately so. But the residents are going to have to be left with, happily or not, any decisions that may get made in the next few months. I really want to see us all working hard to maximize happiness. And we need to, again, that long-term holistic plan is what's going to lead to very happy, contented residents. And that's what I personally am committed to helping deliver, is the most amount of success that we can possibly present with the best solution for everyone. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Inga. And Cameron, Bart, great job. You know, council has been supporting you guys all the way along, and we will continue. The job, though, of course, is through the consultant, Kim, WSP, and of course our staff. But we're there, eyes and ears. You know, if you've got questions or concerns, and I hope that what you've conveyed resonates with the powers that be, that you will have more consultation as required as we go forward. Heather, I guess we're receiving this report or presentation.
That's correct. The resolution is that council receive this presentation, the Burritts Rapids Hamlet Design Plan, HDP.
I'll need a mover for that. Councillor O'Sullivan, and a seconder, Councillor Barclay. All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And do we have some questions? I saw a hand go up there. Who was that? No? Okay, so we'll move ahead. The next, so Heather, you have to help me along because I don't have all the documentation here, of course.
Yes, so I just noticed that Cameron Rhodes has raised his hand.
Cameron, okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was just looking for my hand button and was a little slow on the draw there. So there is a question from a community member that's just been forwarded on our Facebook page. Is that appropriate now, or is that something that we would want to hold on to later? I'm just trying to actually clarify the question, but I just wanted to know if that's something we would hold on to for the Q&A period at the end.
I think it's appropriate, but I will check with my clerk's office there and make sure we're good to go through some questions.
I'll defer to you, Deputy Mayor. There is a possibility or a provision in the agenda at the end of the agenda, which is typically where council receives questions from the public, but you can certainly receive a question now, should you wish.
Well, if it's just one so far, Cameron, let's take it and we'll move on. Thanks.
For sure. Thank you very much. It was from an N. White. Sorry, on YouTube, not on Facebook. I've got my two screens going up here. And he has a suggestion for the overall plan that it should improve. It should include some plans for additional connectivity in the neighborhood, obviously for like ISP support or internet support. And his comment was just that that could be done while the roads are being ripped up. So I know that this live chat on YouTube is not going to be a part of the public record. So I just wanted to put that out there for Council or WSP. I'm not sure exactly who would be addressing that question.
Kim, have WSB talked about connectivity in that sense? I think we came up at one of our meetings before. I know the mayor has a task force that's looking at connectivity across North Grenville. Actually, she's part of something to do with Eastern Ontario and the counties. So it's not just Burritts Rapids, of course, that is looking for connectivity. It's pretty much countywide and further on. I don't know, Kim, I think you did answer or talk briefly about that at our last meeting, but I'll leave it to throw in an answer there for us. Thanks.
Sure. So connectivity for us transportation folks is up on the surface for how the surface side of it is with connectivity to active transportation for vehicles, for pedestrians, and that component, unfortunately, as part of the community design plan and the community is going to look like and aesthetically, that wouldn't include an internet bandwidth, that sort of type of thing. Obviously, when roads are being reconstructed, on that side of it, that would be a consideration and obviously a good time to consider any kind of improvements, but that would be between the utilities and the public works.
Thank you, Kim. Director Dunlop, do you have any more to add to that answer?
No, I do not. I support Kim's answer. If once we get through this plan and we have a capital program moving forward, as we progress, of course, utility or connectivity from that perspective would be something that we reach out on, and is something, of course, that is forefront in a lot of topics currently with everyone working from home as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you to the Bert's Rapids Community Association, you guys, for doing this. If you see other questions pop up, we will have a session a little bit later in the meeting that we can cover those, okay? So Heather, we're moving on now to the minutes of previous meetings. So I will need a mover and a seconder for those.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. There's actually a presentation with respect to Downtown Kemptville Community Action Plan, which is being presented by Hillary Jeannot from the municipality.
Sorry, Hillary, I skipped over you. I see it there now. So please go ahead.
All good. All right, I'll just let Heather pull up the slides here. So as she mentioned, I'm here tonight to present the draft Downtown Kemptville Community Action Plan, along with the accompanying draft Community Improvement Plan guidelines. These documents were pulled together by municipal staff, consultant Neil Garby, who has extensive community planning experience, with vital feedback from community members. Neil had another commitment tonight. I don't think he's been able to join us yet by looking at the participants, but nonetheless, we'll be happy to answer any questions you have about the presentation and attached documents. Next slide, please. So starting in November 2020, the municipality of North Grenville initiated the process to create a Downtown Kemptville Community Action Plan, which I'll be calling the DCAP from here on out, replacing the former Community Improvement Plan, or CIP, with a more robust program to encourage development in downtown Kemptville. This is a 4-year plan to be in place from February 2021 to December 2024. In creating this plan, we considered a bunch of different variety of background material, including the fact that downtown Kemptville was once the urban and mercantile center in the community. Other important background includes the geography of downtown, such as the fact that it's shaped by the Kemptville Creek and bounded by Prescott, Clothier, Rideau, and Sanders streets. Another important aspect considered is the role of the Old Town Kemptville Business Improvement Area, or BIA, and their footprint, which covers Clothier and Prescott streets. While this plan aims to focus on the built aspects of downtown, the programming that takes place there, including events and beautification, is also very important to consider as we move forward towards a vision. Next slide, please. Key stakeholders were asked to provide feedback in the preparation of this plan, and engagement included one-on-one stakeholder interviews with key players such as the BIA, mayor and council, and developers. A community session was held with leaders from groups with an interest in downtown Kemptville, and a developer session was also held with downtown property owners who often are the ones facilitating development downtown. Many insightful pieces came from these sessions, and then throughout the draft document of the plan, you'll see how they informed what we heard. 2 key themes came from the consultations, and they were connectivity and people. There was a desire to better connect downtown's assets and a need to have more people living in the core. Next slide, please. We know that various plans and planning measures have shaped the downtown to its current state. One of the key advances was the strategic planning done by the municipality in 2006 and subsequent visioning project led by Don Munns, which spurred investment and beautification efforts in downtown. A number of downtown business attraction strategies have been pursued, and recently the BIA has been working towards expansion. Although their efforts have been stalled a bit due to COVID-19, they have been successful in creating an associate member program. The municipality passed the current development charges bylaw on November 19th, 2019. Development charges were exempted for a 1-year period, and on October 6, 2020, Council approved an extension of the exemption until March 2023. The building division undertook a review of the number of building permits that were exempted in downtown core over the past 5 years. And although the original intent of the exemption in the downtown core was to stimulate investment, only 1 permit for a single dwelling family unit was issued to date. Other planning tools are available to be used but have not been realized, such as the cash in lieu of parking bylaw, which is allowed under the official plan, but no bylaw has been created to enact this. We also looked at the old and former CIP program, which was created in 2013 and only at that time covered Rideau and Sanders streets and had a budget of $100,000 for the facade, landscaping, and signage portion of the program. The program was oversubscribed in 2014, 15, and 16, and in 2017, the program was expanded to include properties on Clothier and Prescott Streets, and the budget was increased to $50,000 a year for 2017 and 2018. In 2019, the program was continued and $50,000 was approved for this program. Funds were not fully expended in 2018 or 2019. There were a few other CIP programs that were underutilized: the tax increment-based incentive grant, Brownfields Financial Tax Assistance Program, and residential intensification development charges exemption only saw 3 applications, and none of them actually went through to the granting process. Both residential and commercial buildings were eligible for these programs under the old CIP program. Next slide, please. Community members and staff identified a number of challenges and opportunities when it comes to developing downtown. One challenge is capacity allocation. The municipality has implemented a capacity allocation strategy to assist developments as they come online, and this includes prioritization for infill projects, such as ones in downtown. The small 40-foot road allowance on most downtown streets does hamper some development, and the shared ownership with the counties can lead to a longer process, but also allows for partnership opportunities. The last parking study determined that there was sufficient parking downtown, but general perception is otherwise. Those that participated in the engagement process did identify parking as an issue, both for those visiting downtown and those looking to develop in the downtown area. The plan considered the work done by the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing and the recent strategy brought forward by Dillon Consulting. A huge opportunity, of course, the possibility to better connect the many assets and amenities that are already located downtown. And lastly, there lies great potential in the several properties that are primed for development with owners eager to build. Next slide, please. In creating the plan, we focused on a vision that downtown Kemptville is a vibrant gathering point that connects residents and visitors with unique experiences and amenities. In order to develop a suite of tools to spur long-term investment in downtown Kemptville, the following 3 goals were used to frame this plan. Firstly, we look to incent desired investment through financial tools. Second, to establish flexible planning for the creative development. And third, to update practices to align resources and priorities. For a targeted development goal, we realized that the consensus reflected through the engagement process was that the path to long-term vitality for downtown Kemptville will be achieved by increasing the number of people living in the downtown area. Property owners and developers acknowledge that their ventures are in line with this thinking. Engagement participants believe that an increase in residents living downtown will lead to more businesses opening in the commercial units. The vision of downtown includes an eclectic mix of businesses, including unique eateries and a well-rounded shopping experience. Next slide, please. So the next few slides will go over the actual toolkit that we're suggesting be implemented. And the first part of that toolkit is the financial tools. So we recommend 5 financial programs. The first, the development charges waiver, which is already in place, but we would look to extend. A tax increment equivalent residential grant, which provides a grant equivalent to the municipal portion of the property tax for new residential development. The People Make the Place grant, which provides a $5,000 grant per residential unit created in multi-residential builds. A building fees grant, which covers 50% grant to cover up to $2,500 of building fees. And the facade and signage grant to cover 50% of the costs up to $10,000 of high quality improvements to the frontage of commercial spaces. We'll be bringing forward a more detailed financial plan when we bring this back to council, but we are looking at $125,000 annually funded through reserves to cover these programs. In addition, the plan recommends actively promoting these programs to developers, which will be easier to do with the newly revised process, which I will discuss shortly. Next slide, please. As for planning tools, the plan recommends initiating a community planning permit system, or CPPS. Attempting to apply a single set of zoning standards to the downtown area has created barriers to investment. The unique parcel fabrics and building configurations that have developed over the long history of downtown Kemptville does not lend itself to a one-size-fits-all approach. A CPPS regulates the form, scale, and character of development and allows investors to tailor unique solutions to the unique issues of particular pieces of land and consolidates all planning and building and permit applications into one single, shorter process. The CPPS is a land use planning tool that can help to streamline development, approval processes, get developments to market quicker, support local priorities, and create certainty and transparency for developers. Other planning tools include implementing a cash in lieu of parking bylaw, conducting a parking study, and investigating further parking leases with private property owners. Additionally, the municipality should help businesses and property owners in establishing patios, building on the processes launched during the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. Lastly, these programs would not be useful if municipal process and practices don't support them. Navigating municipal approvals can be a daunting task for investors, and yet the relative speed to which the project can be brought to market is the biggest advantage that a municipality holds. New practices such as having a single point of contact, providing top-of-the-pile service, and reconfiguring the development review process will give our community a vital advantage. To ensure the BIA is able to support the growth these programs aim to spur, the plan also recommends that the municipality support the BIA in expanding their footprint to cover Rideau and Sanders streets, as well as to support the BIA in being designated bike-friendly to encourage connectivity. Lastly, this plan includes continuous review and progress checks. We recommend conducting a midterm review in January 2023, including reviewing an extension for the development charge waiver past March 2023, and considering expanded marketing plans and an event strategy at that time. Next slide, please. As for next steps, we'll be taking your feedback tonight and incorporating it into the plan. We will also be posting the DCAP for review and comment by the public in the coming days. In order to implement a CPPS, we will need an official plan amendment, or OPA, and Amy Martin's report provides more detail on the CPPS and the process of establishing it. We'll be back to council with the revised plan at an upcoming council meeting. I want to thank you for your time tonight, and if you have any, happy to answer any questions and hear your feedback.
Okay, thank you, Hillary. That was very good. I don't know what my council colleagues think, but I know a few months back I felt that we needed a robust CIP, CPPS, whatever you want to call it, for the downtown to make stuff happen, because what we've done in the past really hasn't done anything. So through you and I'm sure Gary and Amy and whoever else was involved, thank you very much for presenting this. It's a very encouraging, and I look forward more of the report down the road, and the input from the public would be very interesting to me. My council colleagues, you have questions for Hillary on this? Councillor Barclay and O'Sullivan?
Yeah, I just concur with Deputy Mayor. It's downtown revitalization has been talked about since 2006. And since 2011 or 12, when I started working downtown with the BIA, certainly a lot of the elements presented in this draft proposal are elements that we were looking for. I think there were things in place like the facade, the CIP, the facade improvement, and of course the graduated tax increases. And these are necessary to developing downtown, but not sufficient. Otherwise, we would have seen a little bit more development downtown than we have, as indicated by the response to some of these programs. But I think finally that we've got a plan that has real teeth. And you know, I concur with the mayor and from stakeholders I've heard from that this is very encouraging going forward. I have some questions regarding what's been presented so far, but I understand that we're also going to be seeing a presentation for the community planning permit system as well. So maybe I'll try and hold those questions off to then. I would like to suggest that we've done facade improvement downtown for lack of full subscription over the past. I do note that you're looking at high quality and you've raised the level up to $10,000. But you know, if we're limited in terms of budget, it would be nice to see some of that money allocated for facade improvement shifted over to some of these other elements. I note that some of the new tools that we have, financial tools that we have, allow for at least 10 people make the place grants if they were maximized to the 5,000. I'm hoping that'll be fully subscribed as we go forward over the next 3 years. And the building fees grant up to a maximum of 2,500. Hopefully that will be fully subscribed. And I anticipate, you know, some of the tire kicking that has been done by building owners and developers, that it'll result with the institution of this new, very robust community improvement plan that includes a community planning permit system. We'll see some real uptake in the development community. I will maybe try and discuss now, or should I discuss later, the planning tools, including the community planning system? Is that my understanding, that we'll have another presentation regarding the community planning system? I'm not clear on that.
I think that's my understanding too. Amy will
Yeah.
be. So
Well,
probably-
then I'll hold off until Amy does her presentation, because the bulk of my questions regard that. But this is wonderful to hear. I'm very gratified after working downtown for so long to see, as I said before, something that has real teeth, and I'm sure will be really well received by building owners, businesses, all the stakeholders downtown. So thank you for all your hard work. I think we're going to see some real traction with this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you. And thank you, Hillary, for a very thorough presentation. I really am excited to see some, as Councillor Barclay said, some teeth into the plan for revitalizing the downtown core, because the potential is great. I just wondered if you had, I didn't notice anywhere that the waterfront trail had been incorporated into the plan. And when there was discussion about connectivity and events, I think that would be a really important piece in terms of getting cyclists and pedestrians into the downtown core. And so I just wondered if that's going to come at a later time, or if that's in the works at all. Thank you.
Yes, most definitely. It's a great question. That was one of the really main things we heard during the engagement process, was the waterfront. I think we heard that in every interview and every community consultation and stakeholder consultation we had. And yes, I think we will see that coming when we recommend an event strategy and marketing strategy, not to do right now, but later on in the plan.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. Councillor Strachan again.
So I won't repeat anything that John and Doreen have already said. I think that's very good, a very good package you've put together and presentation. I'm looking forward to finding out more in detail about some of the financial pieces and the planning, the CPPS as well, because obviously there's some key elements in there. Downtown core does need to have something else added into it. There needs to be something to encourage more of these improvements. So I think this sounds like a really good way forward. I would like to say one part though, having cycled through Kemptville quite a bit and through the core, the being designated bike friendly, needs to have a little bit more to it, rather than, it's not a rubber stamp. Obviously, there needs to be design considerations in there, and perhaps other pieces that come in from a public works perspective to make sure that it is truly bike friendly. It's, I think that there are perhaps some things that need to be considered to ensure that is a stamp that we can put on it that is accurate with that space. But other than that, that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strakajan. I believe our CAO, Gary Dyke, would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think a couple of things. First, I want to start at the top is recognize the work that Hillary and her team did, particularly with Neil, assistance of Neil Garvey. This was dropped in her lap at the end of November. It's now not even the 1st of February, and you have the first draft of a pretty comprehensive CIP document, which is, from a standpoint, is unheard of. So I'd like to publicly congratulate Hillary for the work she's done and the effort that's been put into this and the quality of the work that was done. And kind of further to a couple of comments that have been put forward by Councillor O'Sullivan and Councillor Barclay and Councillor Strakajan. This is the beauty of what we're doing here now is we're getting to the point now where we're not looking at these studies on a standalone basis. We have the CIP coming in place. We have the active transportation piece coming in place. We have parks and trail development coming in. We have the tourism strategy coming in place. These are all layered planning documents we're putting, but they're all interconnected. So as you get into the piece like the CIP programs, getting people into the downtown, the designation of bike friendly, it ties in with the redevelopment of Riverside Park. It ties into the redevelopment of the trail system. It ties into the tourism strategy. So they start to feed off each other. So we're not doing one-ofs anymore. We're actually doing comprehensive planning and work planning for the community. So I think that's an important thing as we go forward, that as we move forward, both council and the public should start seeing the really tangible links between all these new studies and documents, as opposed to getting a pile of individual studies. They're all be now connected as we go forward, and that will be our goal going forward, is making sure that we implement what they say, but in a manner that supports the other plans as well. So I just wanted to add that, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyke. Heather, what's the next step here? What do I got?
There is a resolution for this particular item, and that is that council receive the draft Downtown Kemptville Community Action Plan and direct staff to commence the public engagement process for the proposed DK CIP as identified in this staff report.
Okay, thank you, Heather. I'll need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Strakajan and Councillor Barclay. And all in favor? Any opposed? No. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda would be moving down into reports. With your indulgence, Deputy Mayor, I would suggest perhaps moving the report from Ms. Martin up to address the concerns or the questions that were just raised at the last matter.
Yeah, I concur. Which one is that now? What number?
So that is 2.1, which is under planning and development, community planning system.
Okay, I'm good with that. We can move that one up.
Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to adjust the agenda?
Councillor Strakajan and Councillor Barclay. All in favor? Carried. So Amy, I'm assuming you're speaking to this?
That is correct.
Okay, Ms. Barclay.
Perfect. So the key information report I prepared tonight is my way of introducing the community planning permit system. From a process standpoint, we still have a lot of legwork to go to get a CPPS in place. So this includes an official plan amendment to adopt the necessary policies, and then the actual work on the bylaw itself, bringing that forward through the necessary public consultation and with eventual adoption. So I'll just provide maybe a little bit of a background on, traditional planning versus a CPPS and the advantages that a CPPS has over using more of our traditional planning tools, such as our zoning bylaw and site plan control. So typical planning process, we have a zoning bylaw in place, which provides your zoning provisions and permitted uses for a variety of different zones. These numbers are rigid into how development needs to conform to them. Any deviation requires a zoning bylaw amendment. So there's a 90-day process typically around a zoning amendment. And once a zoning's in place, and then you're into the site plan control process, which is, there's another, timeline added on top of that. What the CPPS does is it streamlines all of those processes into one development approval. So, you're looking at a development approval within the parameters of your CPPS. So what we can do is provide that flexibility in an area such as the downtown, where you have lot sizes that are quite small, where redevelopment and new development can be quite tricky, and providing them with that flexibility to develop to their site conditions. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is to break down that red tape through having various levels of processes that developers have had to go through in the past, and streamlining it into an essentially what should be a 45-day approval process. Ultimately, there's a lot of work that needs to go in and around this. I know that the downtown has some unique challenges that were pointed out by Ms. Janot. But being able to provide that flexibility to staff and to the developers, the anticipation is that it'll help spur and encourage more development. So our next steps are to bring forward the official plan amendment, which a public meeting is scheduled for February 10th, and then the process to bring in the CPPS bylaw itself would happen a couple of months later once the policies are in place.
Someone needs to mute their camera, or I mean their audio.
Okay, council colleagues, do you have any questions then for Amy? Again, I want to say thank you, Amy. We asked for a thorough and robust program for downtown, and this is another, of course, more strategic piece or element that planning, of course, will be involved, building, of course. So thank you for that, and thank you for all the work you guys have done, and also for Mr. Dyke for pushing this along as well and putting his guidance and expertise into this. Thank you. Okay, who would like to speak first? Council colleagues? No questions? Councillor Barclay, Councillor Starkerjan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Amy. It was at a meeting with you that I first learned about a CPPS, and it's a wonderful tool, a wonderful planning tool to get things done, to smooth out the process, simplify it, and have decisions come back to applicants and developers, building owners, etc., in a more timely fashion. So it's a great tool. So overall, I'm in great favor of it. I like what's been written in the document, a certain acknowledgement that it's very difficult to develop downtown. You have small, undersized lots. It's nice to see that recognized, and that we're moving into a new era. Well, it's always existed, but it's just been accelerated by COVID, where people are sharing office space. They need collaboration space, working from home space. And so I'm hoping to see, a lot of new people coming downtown to work and to live. So given the challenge of undersized, underutilized, odd-shaped spaces and the infrastructure underneath it, one of the things we'll be having to, the community planning permit system will result in us having to amend certain bylaws and the official plan. Are we looking at, in terms of planning, to accommodate, for lack of a better word, a square peg into a round hole? Are we looking at having some flexibility with setbacks, for example?
Yes, so through the CPPS, you would establish your minimum requirements, and then you would define further what your maximum requirements would be. So if you were going to push further into a setback, there might be some considerations in the design of the building that could be a condition of your development approval. So there's different ways in which the CPPS can work to, address someone who might have to go outside of what standards we'd like to establish, but by having some sort of mechanism to help, lessen that impact. So when we're talking maybe about setbacks from a street, depending on the height of the building, there could be ways that you design it so that, there isn't as great of an impact visually in how you design it and stage the stories on the building. So those could be considerations that are given. It's just one example of how, previously you would have had to, gone through a minor variance and through the site plan process where, the CPPS will provide those conditions for when you want to, just push the boundary a little more, what you can do to help alleviate that impact, whether it's on the streetscape or by, reducing another element on site.
Well, that's great. It looks like it's a tool that will allow for a lot of flexibility and creativity, which is needed when you're developing in an older part of town. The other question I had was regarding parking. And I know it's been suggested that one of the recommendations is to institute a cash in lieu of parking bylaw. Right now, there are certain minimum requirements, but I would ask that the planning department take another look at that and consider dropping the minimum parking required, taking a more market-driven approach and putting the burden on the developer to decide for themselves the amount of parking necessary for the units they're creating, commercial and residential units that they're creating. And part of my rationale behind that is that we recently just extended the development charge exemption downtown, and that's a great tool. And again, it's sort of necessary in my mind for the development of downtown, but it would be negated by asking for cash in lieu of parking. It gives something with one hand and takes it away with the other. If you're looking at a development that has to meet some certain minimum parking requirements, and to make it work, you have to reduce the amount of parking. You end up having to pay cash in lieu of the parking that is required according to the bylaw. Then any value you have from a development charge exemption is negated. And of course, this is all in the details, depending on how much we're going to actually ask the builder to contribute to a parking fund. And so just to back up, the rationale also, and it's stated in the document that, it's an acknowledgement that there appears to be enough parking. I was working downtown with the BIA when the last parking study was released and discussed. And parking is certainly a controversial issue. People say there's not enough parking. Other people says there's plenty of parking. And I would suggest that if we're taking a holistic approach, that we should look at identifying and getting people from the parking that is available downtown. And I'm one of those people who thinks there's abundance of parking downtown. It's just people don't recognize where it is, and it takes too long to get to it. So ideas such as a walkway connecting Prescott Street to Riverside Park, and there's two ideal locations for it, should be considered as part of the downtown revitalization. I don't know in what way that the CPPS would accommodate the construction of those kinds of walkways connecting people. It would basically eliminate 200 meters of walking. If you walked from, say, the Legion to Prescott Street on a walkway, you're 100 meters away. But if you have to leave the Legion and walk along Rubin southbound to get to the CIBC, that's 300 meters of walking. So I think that has to be seriously looked at, and as well as signage. I mean, I tried when I was working downtown to get improved signage, and it was partially successful, but I think indicating and helping people through wayfinding signs, proper maps, there's all kinds of tools you could use, that if we could highlight where that parking is available, and encourage people to, say, if they're running a commercial enterprise, to share the parking with residents who often live above commercial the ground floors. If we encourage businesses to share parking with the residents and take another look at off-street parking, I think we'd be a long way to solving what some people think is an issue, which I think the things that I've mentioned, pedestrian walkways, signage, would go a long way to increasing the availability of parking. So that's my main comment as far as the parking section of planning. That I would advocate for dropping the minimum parking requirements. Let the developer take the risk of eliminating a certain number of parking spaces in order to increase the number of residents or residential units that they're planning to build. So that's the extent of my comments. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Strakajan, I believe you are next in line. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure I agree entirely with Councillor Barclay's point about parking. I've lived in downtown Ottawa, which is a very walkable downtown, and not having parking there when you need it is a problem. And I'm not sure that that the developers necessarily see things the same way as what we would from a municipal perspective or from a resident's perspective. But I'll save that discussion for another day that you and I can have over a coffee. So I have a question though, Amy, because I'm trying to make sure that I understand I understand the differences between the traditional and the CPPS. And I understand that DCAP was the one that in that work that they identified that the CPPS would be a good way of streamlining the development process. What I am not sure about, and it just could be how I'm reading the document, is whether or not the traditional way of doing planning would still exist alongside the CPPS, or if CPPS supersedes the traditional way.
So it would supersede. So the zoning bylaw would not apply within the area that is defined within the CPPS area.
Okay, and so would the CPPS be applicable anywhere else, or could it be applicable anywhere else in the municipality? I know in this case we're talking about the DCAP, but are there other locations where we could see a CPPS being advantageous, primarily because of the flexibility and the streamlining that it gives in the planning process?
Yeah, so the Planning Act and the incoming official plan amendment will allow for that flexibility for a CPPS to be established in other areas of the municipality, not just in the downtown, or it could be municipal wide. I think there's at least 2 municipalities in Ontario that have development permit systems as in place of that traditional zoning. As to where those locations could be, you could always look at kind of where your higher growth and development areas are to help streamline those development processes. So, you look at the lands there on the 43 corridor, there's the potential there for future growth. Anywhere where it could be municipal wide, or it could be in more of your targeted areas where you want to try and help accommodate different forms of development in a more of a specific area.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess in your professional planning opinion, is there a reason why we wouldn't apply a CPPS municipal wide?
Well, for now, we're looking at it within the downtown. It's going to act as a pilot project, but nothing stops us in the future from implementing a full development permit system for the rest of the municipality. Right now, being able to focus it to the specific needs of the downtown will help us get it online faster. And then we could look at, is this a tool that we could expand out and look at how you would apply that, in a more rural context, because we do have a good mix of urban and rural lands. So how do you address that kind of more holistically?
And I guess, sorry, final question. Every time you say something, I think of something else. Is the CPPS being, do you know of other municipalities that are using it that have a similar kind of makeup as North Grenville, where there is, urban with a large portion of rural surrounding it, where it is effective in a rural setting?
So I've seen it used in 2 different ways. I've seen Gananoque and Carleton Place use it municipal wide, but you're starting to see, Brampton has it targeting their downtown areas because that's where they are trying to encourage more development and redevelopment. And they're starting to see municipalities such as Lake of Bays and Innisfil that are using CPPSs as a way of addressing their environmental needs around lakeshore development. So these are communities that have kind of more unique situations that a CPPS, they're able to help address development through that process. So it allows them to, put out front the conditions that you're going to have to meet for development versus where you go through the zoning process and then site plan process, and then through the site plan agreements when you impose those conditions. The CPPS will outline those requirements within the document itself. So, it's more upfront expectations.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Amy. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Councillor O'Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you. Amy, the main thing that I see, well, first of all, thank you very much for this presentation. And I think that the CPPS is certainly streamlines the process and probably takes away a lot of frustration for people who want to do some development, et cetera, in the downtown core. The main difference that I see is there is no notice of public meeting, and then notice of the decision. So there's a big number of days there that's eliminated. But does this mean there is no public meeting with respect to these plans? And the second thing is, would people who live within a certain area of a property in question that was going to be developed or revised or had an application, would they still receive notice of what was proposed and an opportunity to comment and have their input about it? Because there certainly are residential properties that are very close to some of the commercial properties that would be in for development in the downtown core. So those are my main questions. Thank you.
So the CPPS itself, there's a public process that happens to implement and put it in place. So the community at large will be made aware of that process. Should a use conform to the permitted uses and the requirements of the CPPS, there's no public consultation required. The same thing currently with traditional zoning. If a use is a permitted use, we don't have to, go through that public process. It's once you deviate outside of that you require public consultation. So in this regard, should someone have a proposal for a use that is not defined within the CPPS, there is an amendment process to amend the CPPS to bring that in, which would then trigger public meeting mechanisms. But currently as it stands, as in our traditional zoning, if it's a permitted use, it's defined, it's within the parameters, there's no public consultation process other than the process to establish the CPPS itself.
Okay, I understood when it said traditional process, the application is submitted, deemed complete, and then there's a notice of a public meeting. So it didn't distinguish whether or not it was a permitted use. So that was my question about why public consultation in one side and not in the other. But thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. I'll make just a quick comment too, and I'll politely agree to disagree with Councillor Barkley about the parking, and I'll concur somewhat with Councillor Strachan. Eventually, as we promote more intensification downtown and less parking is being provided or created, that I think it's a future issue that could come to bear. And I don't think I understand the reducing the parking minimums for sure. We don't need to go to what the full maximum is across North Grenville, but we do definitely look at potentially some minimums, maybe no minimums at all, but it's something to be looked at. But the cash in lieu of parking, in most cases, either allows them to build the building or whatever they're putting together, the development, or it allows them to add an extra unit, an extra apartment, or an extra home. So I don't think the cash in lieu of parking is a huge amount of dollars that we're talking about. It's a sum that will probably be decided on, but these funds then will be put away for potential future development of very specific municipal parking spaces that we may need, or places, or upgrades of some kind, or whatever. So I'd like to keep that in our back pocket That could change down the road if things go well, but I suspect if intensification does do what we're hoping it will do, there could be more of a concern for parking. And if the downtown becomes a draw, if there's complaints about parking now and has been for the last several years, if it becomes the draw we're hoping it can be, we may have more parking discussions going forward. Those are just my opinions and comment. And I guess I'll allow Councillor Barclay to expand on that.
Yeah, the development charge exemption expires in 3 years, and what we're trying to do here is trigger some development and get the ball rolling. I think some of the things I'm suggesting, like a minimum, dropping the minimum parking, is a desire to stimulate development downtown, and it doesn't necessarily have to be forever. I would suggest that we could put a time limit during which the minimum parking requirements are removed, just as we are contemplating removing the development charge exemption. So again, for me, it boils down to, do we have sufficient incentives to start this ball rolling? Because I agree, once it starts rolling and people start living downtown, many of the problems of development will disappear. As people live and work downtown, and it becomes the spot to shop, to hang out, to interact with your neighbors on the street, to enjoy Riverside Park, et cetera, have a meal. It'll be an attractive place to live, and there'll be demand for more residential units downtown. And maybe once we sort of see how all these different incentives, see if they have some traction. Because again, in the past, we've been talking about downtown revitalization since 2006, and certainly since I arrived here in 2009. And there hasn't been a sufficient number of incentives to get that development happening. So you may think it's overloading things right now, but really until it starts happening, I think they're necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Is anybody else have any questions then? No comments? Okay, thank you, Amy. Great presentation again, and great work that you guys are doing behind the scenes. And we thank you thoroughly for doing this. You know, we asked for something robust, and you're starting to throw it at us now, and we're asking questions, and we'll stay involved in this process with you. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Babcock Cormier, you gonna keep me in line? What's next?
So there's a resolution that council received this staff report PD-007-2021 Community Planning Permit System for information purposes.
Okay, I'll need a mover for this. Councillor Strakajan, and a seconder, Councillor Barclay. Thank you. All in favor? Okay. The next piece, Heather?
Is approval of minutes. So the resolution is the minutes of the following meetings be approved as circulated: December 1, 2020, December 14, 2020, and December 15, 2020.
Seems so long ago. Okay, so I'll need a mover and a seconder on those. Councillor Barclay and Councillor O'Sullivan, thank you. All in favor? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
So the next item will be, Public Works, the 2021 Waste Management Bylaw.
5.1?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and I'm assuming, who's going to be speaking on that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The camera on, camera off. The report has been written by Brandon Chipman, engineering technologist in the Public Works Department. So he will be spearheading the report. I just note that he unfortunately does not have a camera, so you will hear his wonderful voice but not see his smiling face. So Brandon, all yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Director Dunlop. The report that is before you tonight is to recommend that council enact bylaw 7-21 to replace bylaw 10-09. The purpose of these bylaws is to regulate the management, collection, removal, and disposal of waste within North Grenville. At its meetings on September 1st and October 20th of 2020, council approved a contract for a new waste collector, new waste management services, which include curbside organics collection, curbside leaf and yard waste collection, and a curbside bulky item collection program. There's also a new processing contracts in place and also a new bag tag program. With these new programs, the existing bylaw 10-09 would need to change as well. Bylaw 10-09 has been amended 3 times in the past, and with the amount of changes that are being proposed, Public Works determined that a new bylaw was preferable to amending the existing bylaw for a 4th time. In addition to making alterations for the new programs, definitions were also changed to make the bylaw easier to read. For example, instead of the term type 2 garbage, the new bylaw uses the term plastics and container recycling. The financial implications of the program were addressed by council at its meeting of October 20th, 2020, and there are no further implications associated with the passing of the proposed bylaw. Public Works staff responsible for overseeing the waste management program were consulted to develop the proposed bylaw. The Environmental Action Advisory Committee was also informed and consulted with during the process of obtaining and implementing the new waste management program. The passage of a bylaw is required to reflect the recent changes made to the delivery of the municipality's waste management program. The proposed bylaw was drafted to incorporate these program changes. This concludes my summary, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, council colleagues, any questions for Brandon? Nothing? No? Okay, I think we, thank you, Brandon. I think we covered this quite well back, you mentioned, I believe, October 20th, and since then, there's been lots of discussion and the rollout has happened. And Councillor Strachan and Councillor Barkley have been right on top of that. I got my picture taken with my green bin. So we started filling it up with some things. Anyways, so if there's no other comments, then we'll move on to the next, the next piece I need to do, Heather.
So there's a resolution,
Yep.
and the resolution is that council approve and enact bylaw 7-21 to replace bylaw 10-09, being a bylaw that regulates the management, collection, removal, and disposal of recyclables, source separated organics, and waste material within the municipality of North Grenville to reflect recent changes to North Grenville's waste management program.
And I'll need a mover for that. Councillor Strachan and seconder, Councillor Barkley, thank you very much. All in favor? Good, thank you. Carried.
Okay.
Next.
So we've already addressed the planning and development report. So the next item would be correspondence. There is no correspondence. The next item after that is notice of motions.
Okay, council colleagues, is there any notion? No, I see none. Okay.
The next item is introduction and consideration of bylaws. That bylaw 7-21 was just passed with respect to the last resolution. So the next item on the agenda is period for questions from the public and media relating to agenda items. I do have a question that was submitted by Paulina Kerbaka. I don't know if she wants to bring that forward herself if she's here. Okay, I'll read it out then. So her question was with respect to the green bin program, and it is in 3 parts. The first is, can staff or members of council speak to the rationale behind bagging organic waste with plastic for the green bins? Many residents are confused as to why plastic is permitted in the bins. Additionally, does this plastic end up in the fertilizer that is processed from our green bin contents and then sold to local farmers? It's the first component. The second component is, have any staff or members of council seen inside the Convertis facility that processes our green bin contents or seen firsthand how the process works? And the third part of this question is, when will the new bag tags be available for purchase at local retailers? When and how will residents be able to purchase bulky items or seasonal yard waste bag tags?
Okay, Karen or Brandon, who wants to take those questions?
I can filter those questions. So the first one in regards to using the plastic bags within the green bin. The intent is to make the organics program user-friendly. So to use a grocery bag as a liner within the green bin or kitchen catcher, although there are more environmentally friendly ways to do it. So as I said, the intent is for the green bin, for plastic bags to be used as a liner within it, and that's the only intent. So plastic bags cannot be put in as a product, but just as the liner. They are removed from the process prior to it going into the process itself, and the plastic bags are then, their end life will be the landfill site. So it is separated and landfilled. The second question is in regards to, have council or staff been inside the Convertis facility? Unfortunately, we haven't. COVID has put a bit of a crimp in that, but we do anticipate to get there as soon as possible, and Brandon will facilitate as many members of council, the Environmental Action Committee, and staff to make that happen.
In media, of course.
Of course, yes. When will the bag tags be available purchase at local retailers? And how and when will they be able to purchase the bulky item or seasonal tags? As of this Wednesday, the Public Works Department, as well as the Treasury Department, have coordinated the delivery of bag tags to our local vendors. So as of Friday, they will be available at all the local vendors. The bulky item and the waste bag tags for the seasonal waste will not be available for a couple months. Hopefully at that point in time, the municipal center will be open. We will be able to coordinate the sale of that specific product. Also, additionally, the refund of the former tags once the municipal center opens up. So I hope that answers the questions, but I'd be happy to clarify.
Okay, does anybody else want to talk on those points? Councillor Barclay or Chris? Okay, Councillor Strakajan, you want to go ahead?
Yes, this came up at our Environmental Action Advisory Committee meeting yesterday evening, yes, about the use of plastic bags and many of these points. And I think one of the points that Director Dunlop agreed with is that when thinking about what plastic bags we're using, they're removed from at the processing facility, they're removed out, but ultimately they wind up in a landfill. And the purpose of all of this good work is not to increase our waste. It should be to looking at from an individual household perspective, the overall reduction of waste. So the appropriate use of bags to pick up dog waste, for example, or packaged kitty litter, or other meats, perhaps raw meats would be a good idea. There are probably ways that most residents can come up with as a reasonable way to use plastic bags. And if that's the environmental side of things, if there's an option to use newspaper, for example, there are creative origami ways to create liners for your kitchen catchers and so on. And I think that would make environmental sense. But I think a point that many need to consider is that the intent of this program is not to find another way to spend more money on the green bins. Purchasing new bags is absolutely not necessary. Compostable bags, most people would have to purchase those. But if you're looking at using plastic bags to pick up dog waste, for example, we walk our dog, we'll reuse bread bags or something like that to pick up dog waste because we have that already on hand. So trying to think about the environmental and the financial implications of what you're using, I think is important. And overall, I just have a comment regarding the rollout of this program so far and the enthusiasm that has come from a lot of residents. Thank you very much to Director Dunlop. Thank you very much to Brandon and the rest of the Public Works team. I think you guys have done a fantastic job. There's been a countdown from some residents waiting for their bins to arrive, and then they, hurrah, I've got it at the end of my driveway. So I think that's a very good sign. And I look forward to hearing about how this rolls out. And I know that the intent is to provide a report back to council, a few months down the line to show just exactly where things have gone and, the success of the program. So kudos to you guys. I think you've done a lot of hard work, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I go to Paulina, I think she's got some follow-up because I see her camera now is on. Does Councillor Barclay or O'Sullivan have anything to add? No?
Sure, I'll jump in. Yeah, it all makes sense. And I just want to thank Councillor Stracher-Yan, who's very passionate, obviously, from all her activity online about this issue. It's been great, and it's a good example of collaborative leadership that this council endorses. And I don't think Public Works or myself could really handle this without her assistance. So I'm really grateful. She and I both sit on the Environmental Action Committee, and that group has been good too. And any kind of feedback we've had with residents, it's helped us fine tune the rollout and actually the development of this new waste management contract. So it's been a long time coming. I think we started talking about it as soon as we got elected, about the fact that the waste management contract was coming up for renewal. And thanks to Director Dunlop, we were able to delay that a year while we sort of did some head scratching and some consultation with the public, and that was quite extensive. And it's nice to be at this point where we've passed the bylaw and we're rolling out the green bins. It's a great place to be, and I'm really gratified with the acceptance that the community has had for these green bins. It's wonderful to see.
A lot of positive trash talk lately. It's good. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to echo all the comments and thank Karen and Brandon and the whole Public Works team for the hard work getting this all rolled out, and to thank Kristen for organizing the composting workshops back in the beginning. You really converted my daughter, and she's a hardcore composter now. And so I think it's all been very good and very positive for the community, and thank you all very much.
Pauline, I believe it looked like you have some follow-up questions? Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Do you want to email them to Heather? No, we're good. Okay. She's got some technical difficulties on her end, I guess. Okay. If there's, okay, do we have any other questions from the public or media? I don't see any. Do you see any, Heather?
I'm just scanning now. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Nope.
Must have done a good job. Okay. Oh, a hand up there. Cameron's got his hand up.
Hey, sorry, I just wasn't sure if this was for the media or for the public, but I did get some clarification from the one resident who was asking a question earlier during, I think, the WSP presentation. So I can mention that now if it's appropriate.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Andrea Courtney, she lives on the other side of the bridge, just in the Ottawa jurisdiction. She was asking about public toilets. So after some a request for clarification on her question, I think that she would just like to make the statement that there could be a note added on to the WSP presentation as part of the add-on that the beach was causing a lot more traffic, that there has also been some concern about lack of access to public washrooms. And of course, with Parks Canada being seasonal or closed during the outside of the summer and fall, that a public toilet might be an option, which I know was mentioned last week in the discussion with WSP, and Parks Canada did mention that as a stakeholder in the meeting. So that's just wanted to mention and bring it up here.
Okay, thank you, Cameron. If I don't think, is Kim still on the call? So she's making notes. Okay, somebody will pass those notes on to her. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. And we did have just one more question just for clarification, if I could.
Go ahead.
So regarding continued consultation with the BRCA and the community leading up to the next meeting that we have coming up in March, is there a motion? And I do apologize, I don't know the right verbiage here, but is there something that's actionable from the question at the end of our presentation where we may see some more public consultation, or something that's committed to by either WSP, Public Works, or Council at this time?
I think I can probably leave that in Karen's hand, and she can report back to us what they can schedule in, and what they'll need to schedule, what's appropriate. Can I do that, Karen?
At this point in time, I will have to have a chat with WSP as the scope of the project has been identified in the RFP, with the consultation being set out as it is right now. So I would look to council for some input and direction in regards to what they would be anticipating, what they would like, and then I can, with the assistance of the CAO, report back.
If I can clarify for you, Your Worship, if that's all right. Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so what we'll do is as we move forward, we'll identify the points where and consult with the Birch Rapids group as to when they feel that the consultation should be enacted, and we'll put a program and a plan with council as to when those actual dates would be, but we can't commit that there will be further consultation built into the program.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barclay.
Yeah, I think what you can get from council, if I can speak on their behalf, is a commitment to work towards the best possible outcome. What the community has done has expressed a vision for the community that we respect, but we have to work within certain budget considerations, and we do have a third-party consultant. So that's a discussion that'll have to happen internally, but I do want to acknowledge your desire to having a meaningful consultation, and I think that's something that we want to have as well. And I think you'll find our behavior over the last 2 years has sort of proven that we're all ears. And in fact, I'll take this moment to say that there have this meeting and your presentation was watched with real interest by other community associations within North Grenville, and they're all looking for this to be a success, and possibly a process that we can replicate Bishop's Mills, Oxford Mills, etc. So again, I can commit that we're all working towards the best possible outcome within the given circumstances. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Cameron, is that good?
You bet. Thank you very much. I believe that satisfies our question. And obviously, for the members of the community that are watching tonight, either on Zoom here or on YouTube, we represent the community as best we can. And obviously, we respect the wishes for any community members to contact Public Works directly. If they wish to contact us, we can act as a conduit as well, whatever the preference is.
Good. And the community, of course, can reach out to their counselors, whoever they feel comfortable talking to, or all of us. We're all here. We've got emails publicly listed, so you can reach out to us if you have questions or concerns. I see a hand up. Looks like Jay Dwyer.
I think that's applause, Jim.
Was it?
Well, it was applause, but it's also a question. It's a follow-up question. I'm with the Birch Rapids Community Association as well, and I certainly understand, given the constraints of the RPF and the budget, that there are difficulties with perhaps having public consultations, which is why the board would be very pleased, at no cost to anyone, to facilitate it ourselves. We would do it. Give us the documentation. We will organize it. We will give you the results. No cost, free.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. Heather, next. We're just about at the end of this.
We're moving to the close of meeting. So the next resolution is that bylaw 8-21 to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular council meeting held on January 26, 2021 be adopted and passed.
Okay, I'll need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor O'Sullivan and Councillor Strachan. All in favor? Okay, great. That's so moved. So go ahead.
The next resolution is for adjournment, that this regular meeting of council adjourn at 9:08.
I'll need a mover for that. Councillor Strachan and Councillor Barkley, all in favor? Yeah, thank you. Okay, good. So that's the end of our meeting. And as our worship originally said at the intro of our meeting, don't forget to take care of our local businesses as best you can. They need your help. But of course, follow the safety protocols, stay safe, and have an enjoyable evening. And we will be back sometime next week or whenever. Anyways, we're always online.
Good night.
Good night. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.